So reading from next to Devotion, chapter 2, titled The First Stages of Devotion. Lord Sri Krishna instructed Uddhava that by following the injunctions of the social and spiritual orders of human society, one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as a result of such satisfaction, the whole society gets all the necessities of life amply and without difficulty. This is because, after all, the Supreme Personality of Godhead maintains all other living entities. If the whole society performs its respective duties and remains in Krishna consciousness, there is no doubt that all of its members will live very peacefully and happy. Without wanting the necessities of life, the whole world will be turned into Vaikuntha, spiritual abode, even without being transferred to the kingdom of God. By following the injunctions of Srimad Bhagvatam and prosecuting the duties of Krishna consciousness, all human society will be happy in all respects. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. From Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7, titled What Prahlad Learned in the Womb. Text 17. Bhavatam Api Bhuyan Me. Bhavatam Api Bhuyan Me. Yadi Shradadhate Vacha. Yadi Shradadhate Vacha. Vaisharadi Di Shradadata. Vaisharadi Di Shradadata. Shradata. Tri Balanam Cha Yata. Tri Balanam Cha Me Yata. Bhavatam Api Bhuyan Me. Yadi Shradadati Vacha. Sharadi Shradata. Shri Balanam Chameyata. Bhavatam Api Bhuyan Me. Yadi Shradadati Vacha. Sharadi Di Shradata. Shri Balanam Chameyata. Bhavatam Api Bhuyan Me. Yadi Shradadati Vacha. Sharadi Di Shradata. Shri Balanam Chameyata.
Bhavatam Api Bhuyan Me. Yadi Shradadati Vacha. Sharadi Shradata.
Bhavatam api bhuyan me. Yadi shraddhate vacha. Vaisharati shraddhata. Shri Balanam Chameyata. Bhavatam api bhuyan me. Yadi shraddhate vacha. Yadi Shraddha Devata.
Vaishnavi Shraddha
Vaishnavi Shraddha.
Shrivalam Chakriyata
Srivaram Chakriyata.
Bhagavatam Abhibhuyanme Yadi Shraddha Devacha
Yadi Shraddha Devata.
Vaishnavi Shraddhata
Vaishnavi Shraddha.
Srivalam Chakriyata
Srivaram Chakriyata.
Bhagavatam of yourselves. Happy also. Bhuyat. It may be. May of me. Yadi if. Shraddha you believe in. Vacha, the words. Vaisharati, of the most expert, or in relation with the Supreme Lord. The intelligence. Shraddha, Shraddha, because of firm faith. Stri, of women. Balanam, of small boys. Sha, also. Me, of me. Yata, just as. Translation. Prahlad Maharaj continued, my dear friends, if you can place your faith in my words, simply by that faith you can also understand transcendental knowledge just like me, although you are small children. Similarly, women can also understand transcendental knowledge and know what is spirit and what is matter. Please repeat. Prahlad Maharaj continued, my dear friends, if you can place your faith in my words, simply by that faith, you can also understand transcendental knowledge, just like me, although you are small children. Similarly, a woman can also understand transcendental knowledge and know what is spirit and what is matter. Prabhupada's purport. These words of Prahlad Maharaj are very important in regard to knowledge descending by the disciplic succession. Even when Prahlad Maharaj was a baby within the womb of his mother, he became fully convinced of the existence of Supreme Power because of hearing the powerful instructions of Narada and understood how to attain perfection in life by Bhakti Yoga. These are the most important understandings in spiritual knowledge. Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yatha Devi Tata Guru. Vijayate Katita Hyakta Prakashanti Mahatmana. Unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. That's Upanishad 623. Ta Shri Krishna Namadi Naba Ved Ram Indriyai Sevanmukhi Hi Jiva Do Swam Eva Spiratyada. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service unto him. Tatyamam abhijanati yavan yas chasmi tatvata to mam tatvato yatva vishate tad anantaram. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is only by devotional service, and when one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. These are Vedic instructions. One must have full faith in the words of the spiritual master and similar faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the real knowledge of Atman, Paramatma, and the distinction between matter and spirit will be automatically revealed. This Atma Tattva, or spiritual knowledge, will be revealed within the core of a devotee's heart because of his having taken shelter of the lotus feet of a Mahajan such as Prahlad Maharaj. In this verse, the word Bhuyat may be understood to mean, let there be. Prahlad Maharaj offers his blessings to his class friends, saying, also become faithful like me, become bona fide Vaishnavas. A devotee of the Lord desires for everyone to take to Krishna consciousness. Unfortunately, however, people sometimes do not have staunch faith in the words of the spiritual master who comes by the disciplic succession, and therefore they are unable to understand transcendental knowledge. Spiritual master must be in the line of authorized disciplic succession, like Prahlad Maharaj, who received the knowledge from Narada. If the class friends of Prahlad Maharaj, the sons of demons, were to accept the truth through Prahlad, they would certainly also become fully aware of transcendental knowledge. The words Vaisharadidi refer to intelligence concerning the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is extremely expert. The Lord has created wonderful universes by his expert knowledge. Unless one is extremely expert, he cannot understand the expert management of the Supreme Expert. One can understand, however, if one is fortunate enough to meet a bona fide spiritual master coming in the disciplic succession from Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Mother Lakshmi, or the Kumaras. These four sampradayas, or disciplic successions of knowledge and transcendence, are called the Brahma Sampradaya, Yudhira Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya, and Kumara Sampradaya. Sampradaya Vihina Ye Antraste Nisphalamata. The knowledge of the Supreme received from such a sampradaya or disciplic succession can give one enlightenment. If one does not take to the path of disciplic succession, it is not possible for one to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one understands Supreme Lord through devotional service with faith in disciplic succession and then advances further, he awakens his natural love for God, and then his success in life is assured. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnana-salakaya Chakramratamina Tadmai Shirave Namaha Tam Karoti Vacham Pangam Lagate Grim Yakripatamam Bande Shirim Jitarnam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Prahlad Maharaj continued, my dear friends, if you can place your faith in my words, simply by that faith you can also understand transcendental knowledge, just like me, although you're small children. Similarly, a woman can also understand transcendental knowledge and know what is spirit and what is matter. So Srila Prabhupada, in his purport to the Mahamantra, says that even a child can take part in it, even a dog can take part in it. And we see with Lord Chaitanya's travelling through Jarikanda forest that the jivas were not restricted by their bodies, which within each of those particular bodies, if the jiva was in the bodily platform, they had a natural enmity. The deer and the tigers generally didn't sit down together to have a meal. They weren't good chums. You know, one was an aggressor and one was living in fear. And this world is jivo jivasya jivanam, one living entity is food for another. It's a very nasty world. Sometimes we look and we think, oh, it's so beautiful, but actually, if we look at it, we realize that basically it's a hard struggle for existence. That's the nature of the material world. And in the animal world, basically, it means eating, sleeping, feeding, and mating. And that's going on also in the human civilization. In fact, human civilization is not categorized as civilization according to the Aryan or Vedic understanding, unless the Atato Brahma Jigyasa, unless the inquiries are after what is the real self. Civilization means that spiritual goal is always underlying everything. Whatever activities one does, it's in relation to the Supreme. Without that, then simply it's a Naradama. So the Naradama, or there's four types of people who don't surrender to Krishna. Can anyone name some of them? Sanskrit or English or both? No, that's specific, but that is true. The envious people don't surrender to Krishna.
Muda, foolish, grossly foolish.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Asuram Bhavam Asuta. those who professed demons, atheists.
Proud people
But
were proud.
yeah, but specifically Krishna gives four, and definitely proud people don't surrender to Krishna because they don't think they need him. And Naradama, who is known as the lowest among mankind, and Maya Pratagyana, one whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. They may be very intelligent, but their conclusion is illusory. So this Naradama is one of them, and they're considered the lowest among mankind because it's described that they may have all sorts of material facilities, good social care, health care, infrastructure, all those things may be there, but when there's no God consciousness, then it's not advanced civilization, it's the lowest. It's interesting because if you read the fifth canto, the description of the various planetary systems are there. Sometimes it's called 3 planetary systems, upper, middle, lower, and sometimes 14 planetary systems, where they're further divided. But if we take the basic description, upper, middle, and lower, so the lower planetary systems are generally planetary systems where there's more suffering. Middle planetary systems are like Earth, where there's some suffering and there's some enjoyment. But there's neither too much of one or another in comparison to the upper and lower. In the upper planetary systems, where there's so much enjoyment, one can forget yourself. But there's one subterranean heavenly planet is described as that, where the enjoyment is actually so much more enjoyment than in the heavenly planets, but it's categorized as a hellish planet. And how's that? You know, if you're into sense gratification, you think, well, that's a heavenly planet. You know, if it's more enjoyable than the heavenly planets themselves, surely it should be in that. Somebody's put it in the wrong category.
The tendency to forget.
Because there's no God consciousness there. So there's material sense gratification, but there's no God consciousness. So Krishna is so detached. When the living entity desires to have the kingdom of God without God, then he gives them it. Because of the opulence of detachment. It's one of the most difficult opulences to attain. One can attain all the wealth in the world, but can one become detached? That's more difficult, isn't it? If one is very beautiful and then the beauty fades or becomes ugly because of some disfigurement, then is one opulent enough to be detached from that? So this Naradama, this is quite typical, as in Kali Yuga. Even sometimes they proclaim that they believe in God, but when it comes down to it, their activities don't really show that they do. Or their God consciousness is quite part-time, really. So the real civilization we're talking about here, of course, we don't say you're wasting your time just thinking of God for 1 hour a week. Better to do that. Whatever God consciousness is there, Prabhupada always encouraged they should do that and try to become better. But the real God consciousness, which is what everyone should be aspiring to, is that all our activities are related to God. And with Krishna in the center, then there can be happiness. When Krishna is not in the center, then there's envy, and illusion, madness, etc. And Prahlad Maharaj was convincing his childhood friends that they too can understand this position of Krishna being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he also plays women. So the way society, particularly then, was set up was that women didn't really have access to the Shastras. And generally they would hear Shastras through, as well as the Sutras, they would hear the Shastras through narrations like Mahabharata, Ramayana, these great epics, because the nature of the Sutras is that they attract you to entertainment. They need to be entertained. And what is entertainment? It's just a distraction, isn't it? Distraction from reality. Sometimes it's a welcome distraction because reality can be quite hard at times. So within that distraction, then the Supreme Lord is very kindly and cleverly put lessons in there which those he want distracted from the difficult toil of life, they can get some encouragement and inspiration. And then if one becomes adequately inspired and encouraged, then they may actually go looking directly towards the Shastra, reading Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, Bhagavad Prana, that. So because the soul is not confined or restricted by the material body, regardless, what's being said is regardless of whether one is a child or a woman, Sudra, anything like that, which is ordinarily not attracted to the message of Godhead, then by good association and some regular attention to the subject matter, then one becomes attracted. Because Krishna is all attractive, as his name suggests, the soul is automatically attracted to Krishna. Sometimes people ask us, oh, how did you get involved in Krishna consciousness? And we can say this detail or that detail, but the real thing is that somehow or another Krishna attracted us. You may have read a book, seen a devotee, got some prasadam, heard a kirtan, something, but we got attracted through one aspect or another. That's natural because the soul is naturally attracted to Krishna. Even we have this drama, The Genie in the Lamp. The genie is portraying the mad mind who's always making demands and is never satisfied. And the uncontrolled mind is our greatest enemy. It takes us on a roller coaster ride without any brakes. It's like you're getting on a horse and you have no reins to steer that horse. You have no spurs. You have no way of controlling the horse. Just like they have this Scottish folk tale of a selkie. I think it's a selkie they call it, isn't it? So the selkie is said to be a hostile living entity which lives in water, lives underwater, and sometimes it'll come up in the form of a beautiful horse. And people become attracted to riding on that horse, but then when they go onto the back of the horse, then it will ride away into the water, take it under and drown it and devour that human being. So this is a kind of inauspicious mythological being. Kelpie, that's what it is. It's called a Kelpie. A Selkie is another one. Selkie is another type of living entity like that. Kelpie, Kelpie. And actually, they've made one giant model of that around Falkirk. You can see in Scotland, they have this thing called motorway arc, driving along, and to relieve the boredom, they have like half a dozen grass pyramids, and they have various other things, which is someone's idea of how to use your taxpayers' money. So the mind is like that. We think we're going to enjoy, we're attracted by something, and it leads to some kind of destructive path. But when we take to, and this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita as something which seems like nectar in the beginning becomes like poison in the end. And that which is like poison in the beginning becomes like nectar. course, we shouldn't confuse it with enjoyment and mode of ignorance, which is suffering from beginning to end. So the transcendental life may be difficult in the beginning, but it's not that we have to become conditioned to become accustomed to it. Actually, it deconditions us, it removes our conditioning. And just when you think you've overcome some difficulty, and then you might be resting on your laurels, then another difficulty comes because we're continuing the process. So the attachments are coming up. And as we continue to practice, and then the attachments will go. So therefore, whatever difficulty we're going through, we hold on to the Krishna consciousness philosophy, we hold on to this understanding, as Mangalananda says, don't let the spirit of reason die. So we don't allow ourselves to be overcome by ignorance, and we stay in touch with the transcendental knowledge. And therefore, by regular hearing or Srimad Bhagvatam, all that is inauspicious is gradually destroyed to nil. Practically destroyed to nil. And all that remains is that devotional service. So in Kali Yuga, it's considered that everybody is lower than Sudra. Therefore, it's foolish to think in terms of this type of person is suitable, that type of person is not suitable. Nobody's suitable. In Kali Yuga, everyone is disqualified. If we think we're qualified in some way, then that's we just haven't seen that we're not. I haven't seen that we're in Kali Yuga and we're unqualified. But as Narottam Das Thakur says, or was it Lokanath? I'm the most fallen, so therefore, because you're the savior of the most fallen, then my claim is first. This is my qualification that I'm fallen. So this is the Acharya showing the qualification. And what's that qualification? Humility. Even if we think we might say, well, that's okay, but I do have some qualifications. You know, I've got a degree, I could go and get a job, I could get a nice situation. Of course, you've got some qualifications which somebody dreamt up in the material world and decided, okay, you do this, I'll give you this, and then you can get access to this. These are the keys to the enjoyment of the spiritual world and material world. But that is not real enjoyment, it's not real knowledge, it's not real qualification. It's only to play a particular temporary game in the material world. But the real qualification is that we don't see ourselves as being deserving. And like the example is given there, that we deserve the mercy because we're unqualified. So this is not that we become crippled by low self-esteem, simply just realizing that Krishna consciousness and this life of Krishna consciousness is a very lofty situation. It's a very lofty lifestyle. And if we look at our life beforehand, then we don't naturally fit into that category. We're having to make some adjustments. If we follow our own mind, our own nature, then generally it leads to something degrading. But by the instructions of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, then our consciousness is getting elevated. And so they're qualifying us. So, for example, when one takes second initiation, it's not that they have become a qualified Brahmin. It means they have shown some sincerity, and now the spiritual master will train them to become a Brahmin. In the Krishna conscious movement, Prabhupada said it's a movement of Paramahamsas. So when we're practicing this properly, then actually we will come to that level of Paramahamsa regardless of our external designation, whether we're male, female, grihasta, brahmachari. Because the Krishna consciousness lifestyle and practice is actually the practice and lifestyle of Paramahamsas. So if you're just a little bit honest and you look back and think what you were up to just a few years ago, you think it definitely wasn't a Paramahamsa. But now, because of association, Hare Krishna, then we become, just as the iron rod is touching the fire becomes fire, then by the association of the great devotees, then we are destined for the same destination. So these words, Vaisharadi D, refer to intelligence concerning the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is extremely expert. Lord has created wonderful universes by his expert knowledge. Unless one is extremely expert, he cannot understand the expert management of the Supreme Expert. So this extremely expert must be something which is beyond us, because we don't understand the expert management of the Lord. We don't see the hand of the Lord. Even sometimes when it's been there, we don't see it. If you're lucky, you might see a little glimpse of some of the hand of the Lord when it's been there. And oftentimes that means someone else has to point out to us. We don't just see it ourselves. So in absence of this extreme expert, then one can understand, however, if one is fortunate enough to meet a bona fide spiritual master coming in a disciplic succession. So Prabhupada is when he talks about bona fide spiritual master, he says coming in disciplic succession. That means he's qualifying that straight away. It's not just, oh, I know a bona fide spiritual master. It's like Swami Rupavananda. You know, he's a bona fide guru. I've seen him on YouTube. No, he pulled an apple out of his turban. You know, he pulled a rabbit out of his sikha, and he made a rupee appear from behind somebody's ear. Of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you see some people who talk without any reference to Shastra, immediately bogus. You know that? You say, oh, I don't refer to any Shastra. Fine, that's fine. Then you've just revealed yourself as being bogus. Thank you very much. Next. Because without Guru and Sadhu and Shastra, then there's no reference. That means one can say anything, do anything. And as long as you can titillate the mind and senses or pseudo-spiritual consciousness of people, then people think, oh, this person is some far-out person. But they can't even save themselves. At the time of death, they won't even be able to save themselves. Bhajagavindam, Bhajagavinda, Bhajagavindam, Mudhamate. Sankaracharya, as he was leaving this world, he said, worship Govinda, you fools, your words are ugly, they will not save you at the time of death. So sometimes people learn a very good spiel with their pseudo-spirituality, but if it's not based on the Guru Parampara, it's not based on the authorized scriptures, and it's not in line with the character of a sadhu, then it's simply Andhita Mishra, darkness of ignorance. So in each Upanishad it is explained, those in the culture of necessity, activities shall enter into darkness, and worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So simply engaging in some gross material sense thing, which is, it's not too difficult to see how it's just it's ignorance. That's one thing, but when one is engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge or appearing to be an ambassador of light, but meanwhile misleading people into darkness, then that is actually considered a much more dangerous thing. It's called Atma Janaha, killer of the soul. And that is a very unfortunate position for someone to be in, because that's explained that they won't see the light of day for many, many births. So they may have their day, every dog has their day. So if one wants to have a big day by being a big dog, then they get a big price to pay as well. A heavy price for a heavy pose. But thankfully, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to this planet and he's established what is the actual position of the living entity. And Srila Prabhupada has very kindly brought that message to our ears. And all he's asking is that we just chant Hare Krishna and we give it to others and take this message to others as well, so that they too can be benefited. Just like sometimes you might be feeling not particularly fired up, or you may be feeling down, etc. And then you end up speaking to someone and you're preaching to them, and you're basically preaching to yourself. And that's the old saying is that when you help someone get to the top of a hill, you automatically get there yourself. So when we're out giving that message of Krishna consciousness to others, we're actually advancing in spiritual life. That's how it works. If we become too concerned with our own advancement, then we get distracted easier. But when we become concerned with others, even if sometimes we can be honest and say, well, actually, I don't feel very compassionate. I don't want to put myself through some difficulty to go and give Krishna consciousness to others. You know, I'm being honest here. That's okay, you're being honest, but still, just do it anyway. There's that saying, feel the fear and do it anyway. And then we'll see that things will clear up. I must say that when I experienced some of the most difficult times as a aspiring devotee, then I found that being on the street on Sankirtan, that actually you always know that you're rightly situated. If you're ever in doubt about are you doing the right thing, are you in the right place, are you in the right association, then just take some books onto the street and start approaching the fallen conditioned souls, and pretty soon you'll know that you're rightly situated there. There's no doubt about that. Srila Prabhupada gives an interesting concept here. He says, since the body is the external feature of the soul is not dependent on the body. Rather, the body is dependent on the soul. So he calls it an external feature of the soul. And one who understands this truth should not be very much anxious about the maintenance of the body. So becoming anxious about the maintenance of the body is actually more of a mental thing than the physical necessity. Of course, we have to maintain the body, that's true. And we see that some acharyas, they go to some quite interesting measures to satisfy the mind and the senses. Like, it might have been a Kinchana Das Babaji Maharaj, I'm not sure if it was, but one time he was trying to chant some extra rounds. That's the feature of many of these devotees, that they didn't just chant 16 rounds and then put the bead bag in a cupboard till the next day and let it gather dust. They were always chanting. But at one time the senses were giving some trouble, so he was basically treating them like a second entity. He says, "Oh, my dear stomach, so you're hungry? You want something to eat?" So he took some Ganges mud and ate it. "Okay, you satisfied now? Can we go on with chanting?" So we shouldn't imitate such advanced stages. Such a thing like that would be destructive to us. That's only someone who's really on that stage already. To imitate that would actually be an offence. But it was there to illustrate that simply we can recognise the demands of the bodies as being simply what it is. It's demand of the body. We don't always have to give in to them. It's like when we used to do the Ekadashi, for many years we used to just do a Nirjala Ekadashi. We wouldn't eat or drink. And by doing that regularly, you actually get to see how the mind and the body works. At a certain point in the day, then the mind is, first of all, in the senses like, okay, where's prasadam? And then you may feel certain pangs, certain symptoms. But as you're doing that regularly, you think, okay, there's that passes in about 20 minutes. Okay, let's carry on with the Sankirtan. And then it goes. And then, of course, round about 6 or 7 at night, then the conversation just becomes all about prasadam. And you realise, oh, here we're talking about prasadam again. At least it's prasadam. Hopefully it was offered when talked about it. So if we don't give in to the mind and senses, then we can see what their effect is. But if we give in to them, we don't see it, we're just under their effect. And we can make experiments on this. Sometimes devotees willingly fast, or they willingly do some extra sadhana. And they think, okay, rather than me just, I've done my service for the day, rather than me just like fiddling about doing who knows what, or just drifting a bit, why don't I do something like more intentional, spiritual intentional, like going to do some focused reading, extra chanting, learn a bhajan, learn the translations to the songs that we sing every day that I don't know what they mean, things like that. Do something which is going to give us more meaning in our devotional service. If we're thinking we're going to give our lifetime to devotional service, then it's important that the things we're doing every day we actually get a good understanding of. Like we learn how to pronounce them properly for a start. You're going to be singing it for the next 40 years, you may as well learn it. You may as well also understand what it means. If you understand, then even when you're singing the Sanskrit, we might not understand Sanskrit, but you get the concept of it. Guru Charanarati means we're attached to the lotus feet of the Guru, or we're aspiring to be attached, like that. So when we read a word, like Janmi, Janmi, Prabhu say, it's interesting, Janmi, Janmi means birth after birth. So the word Janmi, and then there's another word written after it, birth after birth. Prabhu say, he's my Lord. So when we're singing these things, we can actually feel it. So there's never a time when a devotee remains idle. This is described in the Nectar of Devotion, that a pure devotee never likes to remain idle. So by utilizing our time and not being idle, then we will become that pure devotee. And being a pure devotee is not something which is unattainable, because we already are. We have just forgotten it. We're simply trying to wake up again. And that is not an academic exercise. It's not like, okay, I've got 15 Bhakti Shastris under my belt, and I've done this course and I've done that course. At the time of death, the Vishnu Dutas aren't going to say, okay, let's sell your certificates. They want to know what you've been doing with your time. Have you been serving the mission with the right purpose? Have you shown compassion to the fallen souls? Have you developed a service attitude toward the devotees like that? Not that simply we take the opportunity to try to use a material intelligence to rise above others. Try to rise above others in devotion service, simply put yourself down below them. In the spiritual world, those who are lowest are the highest. We can't fake it, it has to be real. And if we want that, then Krishna will give that. And we see for a devotee who's humbled, then they can never be harmed. Right, Prahlad Maharaj, he was under so much attack by his father, but because he had the great blessings of Narada Muni, he received the transcendental knowledge, and he was self-realized, humble soul, even within the womb. What to speak of, being a Sudra, a woman, a child, even within the womb, he was enlightened by Narada Muni. He was already a great devotee, but he got the association of Narada Muni. And even then, that material situation was not an impediment. And it's interesting because Sukadeva Goswami, he was in another situation, being in the womb, and he heard Srimad Bhagvatam within the womb. So this is something which, when mothers are pregnant, the devotees, they recite Srimad Bhagavatam, or they go to where the Bhagavatam is being recited, so that the child within the womb will get the best possible situation from day one. Just like we had with a friend, Mogai in Glasgow, and every day the mother would be hearing the Vishnu Sahasranam and Srimad Bhagavatam, 1,000 names of Vishnu and Srimad Bhagavatam. So the mother had understanding that auspicious transcendental sound vibration is the best thing one can do for the child. So the spiritual masters like this, he's simply trying to give us the transcendental sound vibration because he knows it's the best way for us to get out of this material world. This is our lifeline out of the material world. And Prahlad Maharaj here being compassionate. You see here, even as a child, he was compassionate, and later on, he talks about he's not interested in renouncing, going to the forests, etc. He simply wants to go to the most busiest places where the people are to preach Krishna consciousness. So we're following in his footsteps. And we see later on that when Prahlad Maharaj, that was Dhruva Maharaj. Same thing though. When Dhruva Maharaj was finished his term on this planet, the Vishnu Dutas came to take him away to Dhruvaloka, which is considered to be a spiritual planet within the material world. Then he was looking around, and Vishnu Dutta says, "Don't worry, your mother's coming as well," and she was on some other airplane. So this is a message that when we surrender to Krishna, we don't have to worry about whatever material duties we think we may have. Krishna will take care of them. And these examples are given. Okay, we'll just stop there if anyone's got any questions or comments. And
so, like, Ekadashi, when devotees used to do Nirjala fasting, and thereafter the next day they would again go out, distribute books and everything, as usual.
but during the fasting, they'd go out also.
Yeah, and the next
And
day
next day also,
they will
yeah.
breakfast and usual book distribution.
Yeah.
No change in kind of schedule.
No.
So one question, so like you mentioned, going out on the streets, distributing books, one will feel encouraged, one will never feel that, okay, he's rightly situated. Now we see within the movement, not everyone is a book distributor. And I suppose not everyone may not be a book distributor as well, actively approaching people on the streets like that. So for them, like, what would be for them like to be rightly situated, or is it just book distribution for someone to be rightly situated?
Well, first of all, to say one's a book distributor, not as a book distributor, is putting some kind of limitation on it, because it doesn't necessarily have to be that one has got an ability to do that or not, but simply one may not be very good at it, in terms of somebody may go out and do 100 books, someone might go out and do 2 books. They're still a book distributor because they just read books. 2 souls got that message. But if we're comparing ourselves to someone else's service, we might think, oh, I'm not a book distributor, sure, I can't do it like that. So, but that service is seen by the Supreme Lord as significant. So, of course, you could think, well, I could do something more useful than stand on the street doing 1 book a day. You know, I could do something more useful in another department. So the thing is, we should see it in relation to that. The whole movement is called a movement because we're trying to create some movement. It's not the Hare Krishna stagnant, or the Hare Krishna get comfortable. It's Hare Krishna movement, which means some movement is going on, and that means also movement in the heart. In fact, Thakur talks about giving up ourselves comforting, and we can find other services to do, just like many people find reasons not to join a temple, because just when they're about to join, suddenly there's something important comes up, which was there before anyway. It wasn't that important, but now it's become important. So the main thing is actually to do something to help the movement, whether we actually front line on the street doing it, or whether we're doing something, but we have to see it in relation. It shouldn't be done in the mood of serve and swerve. It's like, I know I should be doing this, but I'm just going to find something else to do so I don't have to do that. Then that's not, just like we know one devotee who had a very auspicious passing and went back to Godhead, and that devotee only did a couple of days Sanktan, but to make up for it, when they were back in the temple, which was pretty much 99% of their devotional life, they made up for it by doing very diligent service, very attentive, and a good amount of service. Not just like, I'll just find a comfortable little situation, just do a little bit of this and that. Most of the time I'll just float around. That kind of thing's not going to get you back to Godhead. Like Dhanavir Maharaj says, devotional service works, but not sloppy. Krishna consciousness will work. So the main thing is we have to become single-pointed, Ekeha Kurunandana, in order to become free from Bhoga and Aishwarya, Bhogeshwarya Prasaktanam, Taiparatichetasam. If we want to become free from the distraction of opulence and sense gratification, then we have to be fixed on devotional service. Otherwise, our progress is going to be very, very slow. So when we're back at the temple doing some service, then we should, and if we're thinking, oh, I'm not much of a Sanktan devotee, at least I can do this to serve the Sanktan, serve the preaching. And when people come, then we try, when we're doing a reading, we're thinking, okay, let me read so that if any people come, I can try to relate Krishna consciousness to them in such a way that they can be benefited. So we can all be part of the same movement. If anyone else would like to say anything.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So in the translation, Prahlad Maharaj says a woman can also understand transcendental knowledge. And on that line, you were saying that women didn't have access to the Shastra previously, in previous ages. So why is that Prabhu, that like women were not given the access to the Shastra?
Why is it that what?
Women were not given access to the Shastra.
I don't know, I wasn't there at the time. quite likely that the degree of literacy amongst Sudras, women, children, or other different classes, it's quite likely they didn't have the literacy, and their understanding of spiritual life would be given from the messages from the Brahmins and from sadhus going door to door. Because even in the so-called advanced Western world, literacy has only been here for like 100, 150 years. So, and considering that Sanskrit is something which takes quite a bit to learn, and it's most likely the majority of people, and a great majority of them as well, would have been illiterate Sudras, or mostly illiterate. So their understanding of things would have came from the learned Brahmins. Because they're too busy working to sit down and learn Sanskrit in their spare time. It's not that they couldn't understand it. Some people were born in a Sudra family, but because they had the qualities of a Brahmin, they were considered Brahmin. Other times people are born in a Brahmin family, but they don't have those qualities, so they're considered less than Brahmin. So it's all about qualification. Folks, you had something? Thought you.
Just well, I'm just in clarification in the third point. It says coupled with understanding is faith. Oh, simply by faith, but it's interesting. Simply by faith, you can and this what it seems contradictory because faith would be something that you just accept, and understanding would be a process of assimilation of information. So it seems that it's coupled together that by the act of having faith in something, that also becomes the process of understanding transcendental knowledge.
Yeah, so it begins with faith, isn't it? Shraddha begins with faith. Because the example was given that if you want to get to a destination, you want to get to London or you want to fly to Jersey, you've got to have faith that there's a good chance the airplane's going to get there, otherwise you wouldn't even step on it. So you have to have enough faith to go up those steps and sit on the seat. If you didn't have that much faith, you wouldn't even make an attempt to do the journey. So we've looked a little bit into it and we've seen, okay, lots of people are flying airplanes. Many, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me. So we're seeing many stories in the Shastra where Magrari the hunter became a great devotee by the chanting of the holy name, etc. And we've seen the power of association of sadhus, great saintly devotees and sages. And actually, our intelligence feels purified, and the whole theory of everything just seems to be, it's like Prabhupada said, this Srimad Bhagvatam, there's no comparison, there's no competition. So we don't find anything higher than this. So that gives us some faith that this is leading to somewhere auspicious, this is leading to somewhere good. So with a little faith, we think, okay, let me put it into practice. We get the theory and we think, yeah, okay, that sounds good. I've never heard explained. I never heard anything explained in such a way as Bhagavad Gita is explaining it. Yes.
I was just wondering whether sometimes the problem is that if he does accept something perfect, but he doesn't realise that it's only half the process and he hasn't actually come to the point of understanding the transcendental things. So he goes along for a few years doing everything on good faith. And a few years later down the line, suddenly realises, I've accepted everything in the books verbatim, but now I'm realising I actually don't understand that. Like Shivamas was saying, to those things that are automatic advancement. So they just think, if I just do this, and think, I have faith in it, and to achieve it. But and he was saying that's that faith, automatic advancement is there, not as an alternative, but as a result of educated study. So so okay, it's great.
And the answer is given here is that one must have full faith in the words of the spiritual master. So from having some faith to having full faith, and then he says, then the real knowledge. So if we don't have full faith, then the real knowledge won't come, so our faith has to increase. Then the real knowledge, so you may be going along, putting your faith in some process for some time, it might be decades even, then you realise, actually, I don't know first thing about what I thought I knew about. I thought I knew something, but now I realise I don't. That's a good thing, isn't it? It's not like, oh no, I've wasted my life now. It's not, no, this has brought me to this point where I realise I don't know what I thought I knew. And that's the beginning of knowledge, to understand that I don't know. And this is also given that one has to become like a blank slate. It may take years before we even become that blank slate.
Yeah, and that devotee in Wales, Hansi, brother, he looked at the etymology of the word understand, and it's to situate yourself. To stand is to situate yourself. So you could embark upon a journey with good faith, but you have to become situated. You have to change your position, and then you're able to take shelter. And when you get shelter, so I think understanding is very shallow in the West.
So it's an individual thing, therefore a tata brahma jigyasa, one has to inquire, how can I understand? How can I understand this? And if we think we understand it, how can I really understand it? How can I understand it more? If I'm thinking, okay, I read that, okay, let's kind of understand it somewhat, and then fine, what time's prasad? Okay, prasad should always be there because it's that time, but Krishna's unlimited, so it's not like we can just read a few books and think, okay, I know what it's all about now. Now I can just like have an easy time and just not really kind of put myself through any difficulty or have to do any real soul searching or make any big changes in my life. Changes will come. They have to, because if we haven't really changed our heart, that's still got to come. And Krishna will let us carry on in the process, in some kind of somewhat sleepy state for some time, but then if he adds his kindness, he'll take things away from us, or he'll give us things where we have to take shelter in him in order to go forward. And sometimes we don't feel that that's Krishna's kindness, but that's his kindness is he's taking us out of this material world, which is what we came in for in the first place. We just didn't realise what it meant, what we had to give up, what we had to accept.
It makes me think of that pastime with the Govardhan that once the boats were under the Govardhan, then they were sheltered. So it's like if the opposite of understand, you have to stand under to understand. You have to situate yourself in a situation where you have shelter, which is more than just thinking of figuring things out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last question.
An online comment and maybe a small question, please, if I comment. So I'll read the comment. This is from Karina. She's saying, thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for your knowledge. And I'm sad I don't have enough time to visit while I am here.
Hi, well, Karina, it's nice to know that you're there. Sorry we missed you as well. Hopefully next time we'll meet up. We're having the 6-hour kirtan tomorrow if you're in Glasgow.
Very well.
If not, you might be able to join it online.
So those who don't take Shastra into any consideration and say like many people they speak about experiences. Well, I've experienced God. I know I've experienced. I'm not going by the books. Your is bookish. Don't give me books. Speak about experience. We sometimes encounter that how to put in Krishna consciousness if you know. And also like some devotees, their faith may get a bit challenged. Well, he or she is saying experience and these things and very high level way, and all I'm doing is somehow chanting and not trying to fall asleep there.
Yeah, so experience must be there. There must be some real tangible experience. But at the same time, if we're experiencing God and God says this is my book, read it, then we would say, oh, yeah, definitely. Wouldn't think, no, I'm not taking a chance on that. If we actually experience God when God's book comes along, Bhagavad Gita with it, yeah, that definitely rings true with what I've experienced. Otherwise, the experience is subjective. Some people take hallucinogens and they think they've seen God. They may have seen something beyond simply the bodily concept and something a bit phantasmagoric, or even something a bit on a higher subtle level. But it doesn't mean to say that's the end of it. They may get a little peek into something, but then it's if we've seen God and then God's literature comes along and we don't accept it, then we have to question what has been actually experienced.
Particular person is asking us, oh, I experienced God, so listen to me what I'm telling you. So that means that they're asking to put our faith in them, but we are saying that we are putting our faith into Shat Goswami who have experienced Mahaprabhu and experienced Krishna, and they have given that experience to us in their literature, so we are following that.
Yeah.
So we have to have faith.
So sometimes people say that, well, you shouldn't read books and you shouldn't listen to anybody. So we could just ask them, okay, well, please kindly practice your own philosophy and stop speaking. Take monobrat. And then we'll see you practicing what you preach. Because you won't be practicing anything or preaching anything. And there was one person who wrote in his book that one shouldn't read books. He had to write a book so you could read that. And people saying, oh yes, that is great, one shouldn't read books, and they were following it because they were blind followers. And you can buy it with blank money as well. Yeah, so devotional service is a very practical thing. It's not some kind of pseudo-spiritual thing where you say something vague and it sounds profound, but really there's nothing to it. People like that kind of mystery, but mystery is for those who want to remain mystified. Knowledge that evaporates the mystery. And sometimes it's a type of subtle sense gratification to stay in that mystic or mystery type of mood, but rather than Srila Prabhupada has given us this transcendental knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita and Nectar of Devotion. There's so much knowledge there, Nectar of Instruction. It takes the mystery out of it, so therefore it's like, okay, this is real spiritual life. Now that I've lifted the curtain out of the mystery, what are you going to do with it? And then the real test is like, do you want to be spiritual or do you want to play at being spiritual? Well, I'm a seeker, I'll just keep on seeking, but I don't want to find, if I get any hint that I might find something, I'll run a mile. Oh, don't read a book, because that might tell you something you've got to surrender to. So certainly we cannot understand the unlimitedness of Supreme Personality of Godhead, but by having some faith and practicing to whatever degree we can, then some transcendental knowledge will be revealed to us simply as a reciprocation of that practice. And there's sometimes even there's a certain amount of truth where people say, oh, you won't get knowledge in the books because you might read the wrong books, or simply people read the right books, but they just put too much emphasis on reading the book rather than putting it into practice. So there has to be a balance between putting into practice the spiritual knowledge and assimilating that spiritual knowledge, and learning to discern what is spirit and what is not, what is conducive for our advancement in the spiritual life and what is detrimental. Okay, we'll just stop there. It's going to go around the key. Bad key. Srimad Bhagvatam key. Right, Lord,
Prabhupada,